Again, welcome everybody to our Agile Austin coaching meetup. And we're just the format for today, we've got a few slides to open up with. Then we'll introduce our speaker, which will be the majority of our time. And we'll talk a little bit about how that part will flow after we get through our intro slides. Just to do an introduction first, my name is Lonnie Dame, and I co-host with Sid Markle. And really, we love doing this because it's an opportunity to bring the community together. So Agile coaches, Scrum Masters, leaders, pretty much anybody who's interested in bringing Agile to their organization, not just development. I actually come from the marketing side. Now I'm in customer success and customer experience. So either area of the business can be Agile. So we do meet for the first Monday of every month. And so like we said, usually around this time via Zoom. And just FYI, if you can't attend, we do also record these and post them on our YouTube channel. So you can always come out and check it out later. Just a little guidelines or kind of some, what do we call it? So what to expect for today. So like we'll be, Sid and I will be the host, so we'll be helping out with some of the logistical kind of Zoom stuff, making sure that the conversation is flowing. So if we need to, of course, just due to time, because we like to end on time, we will kind of just be those timekeepers as well. We'll share a little bit more about how our speaker today would like that, at least the questions to flow. This is very interactive sessions. We always like having folks interact, and whether that's coming off mute, so feel free to speak up, and also feel free to use chat. We know folks, depending on where you're at, one or the other totally works. And then if you need anything else, feel free to chat Sid and I as well. And again, just for Agile Austin, the mission is really to connect people, to foster some of that professional growth, all focused on the Agile values, principles, and practices. We do have some other meetups under the Agile Austin umbrella. You can go to our meetup.com/Agile Austin to see those. These are the most active ones in terms of, I know the leadership one, Max Leads, book club's always very active, reading some great books, Agile at Scale and Lean Kanban. So if you're interested in any of those, please do check them out. And then the other big thing is that we host a conference every year, and we're super excited to have our next one March 7th, and that's Agile Growth Mindset is the focus. It's right before South by Southwest, is that right, Max?
Yes, it's right before. So we're saying come for car, stay for South by Southwest.
Yes. And so that's a full day. We'll be sharing more about that in the future in terms of speakers, but we do have some great folks already as our keynote speakers. So take a look at our website. Tickets are already on sale, so go ahead and grab your ticket.
And sponsors are welcome, always.
All right. Yeah, more sponsors. Please join. And then we do have just our sponsors for every day of the week, or every day of the year. That's what I meant. So thanks to our sponsors here who really help out our meetup. And then our sponsor, Agile Velocity, as well, is currently offering us 15% off of all public workshops. So if you want to grab that QR code, and I'm happy to show it, flash it up again at the end if you need that. They have some great courses if you're looking to dive a little bit more into the Agile certification space. All right, just a quick look ahead. We are at the end of the year, starting the new year. We do have a meetup happening in December, and it will be in person. So if you are in Austin, check out meetup.com. We're super excited because we do a lot of this virtually, which is great because then we get great speakers like Will from South Africa. And at the same time, we like to foster the in-person. So check out the information on our December kind of get together, celebrate how the year is going, a way to connect with each other. January, we like to take January off because everybody needs a little relaxing time, get ready for the year. And then we'll start off wonderfully in February with a couple of our speakers from Agile Disciples who are going to talk about psychological safety. So go ahead and bookmark all of that in your calendar, go to meetup.com and register. And with that, Sid, I'll pass it over to you to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Lonnie. All right, I am so happy tonight to introduce our guest speaker, Will Vanderwalt. He is an Agile maestro with credentials to prove it. Okay, Will is a certified coach with the International Coaching Federation, a senior coaching practitioner, and a team coach with EMCC, which is a European-based coaching federation. He boasts a remarkable history in lean and agile practices and holds a prestigious IC Agile ICAC certification, signifying his expertise as an Agile coach. Will's journey, deeply rooted in Agile methodologies and leadership transformation, promises to shed new light on a critical topic of leadership integrity, inspired by the integral model by Ken Wilber. So let's give a warm welcome to Will Vanderwalt for tonight's talk. Thank you so much, Will.
Thank you, everyone. It's really great to be here, and incredible to see how much this community is doing. It really warms my heart. And hearing the introduction, it's always a little bit like, gee, is that me? So yeah, just one or two things before I jump in. So you're going to see two cats. It's 2:30 a.m. in the morning here, and they are very habit driven. And I've never seen them play like this. So if you see cats running around and breaking down my house, I will be okay. And then, as I'm a systems coach, I believe in the spirit of working with systems. And one of the things that's really important in systems is to honor the energy in systems where they came from. And so I was referred to your meetup by my friend Erin. She's on the call with us here today. So I'm acknowledging that. Lonnie, Sid, Erin, thank you for the opportunity. This is really important work for me, and it's an incredible privilege to be able to share that with you guys today. So before I start, I'm going to welcome you to work with me in whatever way is appropriate for this meetup, for the culture that you guys have, and for your needs today. So if you have questions, I welcome them. I'm going to see where things go. This is a broad topic, and I'm already hearing from what Mike and Max positioned ahead of time that there may be a little bit of a focus, even if I look at what was in the chat. So feel free to let that unfold as we go. There are a few things that I would like to land, and I did promise not to make it too theoretical. I do warn you that when it is 2 a.m. in the morning, I do tend to become a little bit random, and I can get very high in meaning. So also feel free to reel me in, right? Okay. So I'm going to then start sharing my screen, and let's jump in. And I just quickly need to do one more thing. I just quickly want to check before I do. Lonnie, it seems that option that we talked about has disappeared. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think you're good right there.
All right. Thank you. All right, so here we go. Right, so welcome to this chat on leading with integrity. We're going to be exploring a path to what it is like to lead with integrity while we need to lead amidst complexity. And why this is important for Agile coaches is not just because we work with leaders who are expected in what I want to position as almost a harsh way, that leaders are expected to be able to lead amidst complexity. But as Agile coaches, we are naturally also in the position of leading. And we are looked to oftentimes to lead in a way that models agility. And I think there is this interesting correlation between inner agility, which is this elusive holy grail that everybody in the Agile community keeps on talking about, and integrity. And that is part of what I'm hoping to explore today. And it's some of what I already heard in the chat coming up before we jumped in. So we're going to be looking at some core basic understanding of the concepts. We're going to be looking at the problem, the opportunity, the challenge of the work, and what the actual work is. And I'm hoping that we're going to be spending the majority of our time in the points of what is the work and how can I do this work as an Agile coach. And then obviously your questions are welcome throughout, but we'll have some focus for conversation and questions at the end. Okay, so let's jump in. First thing, if we position some concepts, first position I'd like to place is the definition of integrity. So I don't know about you, but growing up in a Christian background, in South African context, people love to refer to root words and Latin and all of that wonderful stuff. And if I look at many books that I've read around this topic and talks that I've attended, people always refer to the Latin for integrity as a means to define what integrity is. And that has got something to do with integer and integral and being whole. So the first part is positioning why I find this problematic, or at least unhelpful. If we refer to integrity as a sense of wholeness, it assumes that a lack of integrity is going to equate to me being less than whole. So already in the definition, there's this pressure, this expectation, this subtle understanding, this unspoken agreement that for me to speak about integrity, to have integrity, to work on integrity, to even hold this as a value, I need to, at all times, exhibit wholeness. So that also implies that there's performance. This performance within integrity then equates to this elusive state of wholeness, and with that performance comes strife. I'm also sensing that in that definition is an expectation for perfection and a lack of vulnerability. So if this emphasis is around being within integrity, I think the question is, where is the chicken and where is the egg? And how can I have a conversation with the two of them on how I get to either state? The next part is another little funny definition that I grew up with, which is that integrity is when you do the right thing even when no one is looking. And this really irked me because I really tried very hard as a child to live by this. And even in my 20s, I'm now really ancient, so my 20s is really a long time ago. No, even in my 20s, this was a thing. And when I started thinking through this, I realized that it assumes that I, if not all of you on this call, do things we ought not to do when other people are not looking. And that this is wrong. And that we do it even though we know it's wrong, even though we know that we ought not to do it. And that we do it knowingly as a sort of perverse sense of, I don't know, self-disappointment, a sense of not being able to trust myself, that I can actually do what I know I ought to be doing. And then next is this whole process of what is wrong with me? Why do I do these things when other people are not looking? So I started having conversations with people around this, and I found that there seems to be common ground around the topic of integrity. I also found that when talking about integrity in organizations, that people shy away from the topic. And I also found that in my own life and with others, there's a sense of shameful introspection that comes with the work around integrity, which is unhelpful because it doesn't help us to do this crucial work. And this is why I started unpacking this definition and our cultural understanding of what integrity is. So the first thing I'd like to do is I'd like to screw with our minds a little bit today around how we understand integrity to be. So part of the second challenge that I have with this definition is that it expects, beside performance, it expects us to have this conviction within ourselves around what it means to be within integrity. And it also expects us to have a sense of personal mastery and self-regulation already. So again, it's back to chicken and egg. If I can't self-regulate because I do things that I ought not to do when other people aren't looking, then how do I develop self-mastery and personal self-regulation in order to attain integrity? And nobody seems to be able to have an answer on that. It's, again, that endless loop. And the last part that I find problematic is that it positions in a shaming way that if you don't already have personal integrity, self-regulation, and self-mastery, then it cannot be attained. There is a little bit of an on and an off switch that is implied in the Latin and in this definition for integrity. So it positions that when we self-regulate, because of a social function, we lack personal capacity for self-regulation and integrity. But what's really weird is that as children, we know that we learn what is right and wrong through social function. As children, we learn about integrity and self-mastery by learning from others what is okay and what is not okay, by knowing that I'm being watched. It's the process of developing that inner capacity that comes with that process of learning. And unfortunately, for many of us, that came with the understanding of being shamed or being wronged and being made wrong by others. So I would like to, at this point in time, take a big pen and scratch through this definition and scratch as hard as I can so that we can see what the universe has in store for us behind it. There's magic here, and I wonder how we can find that. So I'm going to refer to a different definition of integrity, and I'd like to invite somebody to please read that for us. Who's feeling brave today?
I can read it.
Thanks, Paula.
Yeah. Integrity is generated not by unvarying behaviors, nor by espousing the same principles consistently, but rather through more and more dynamic and continual inquiry into the gaps within ourselves.
Thank you, Paula. Yeah, so what I like about this definition, which I'm going to build on, is that it says integrity is generated. It's not an on and off switch. So like trust and the research of Amy Edmondson, we know that trust is not on and off. I either trust you or I don't. We know that I can trust you to walk my dog, but I won't trust you to use my credit card, right? And me trusting you to walk my dog is like an 8 out of 10, and me trusting you to use my credit card is like a 0. So there's a scale of trust which changes over time. It is socially informed, and it is also personally informed. I think it's the same with integrity. You don't either have integrity or you don't. You have integrity around certain things at certain times, and it can be generated over time as opposed to that you should already have self-regulation in order to have integrity. What's also useful about this definition is that it speaks to values. It speaks to values and principles and unvarying or unwavering behavior. So integrity doesn't require unvarying behavior, which again speaks to that self-control, that self-regulation and perfection, always living by the same values, always being whole, presenting others with a sense of performance and perfection. It actually says that we don't have to espouse the same principles consistently, but rather there's this aspect, this relationship between dynamic. Dynamic here for me almost refers to creativity, innovation, inspection, adaptation. It refers to exploration, of failure, of not knowing, of curiosity, of being able to be flexible and adapting my behavior, exploring things, trying things, learning things. getting it wrong, being outside of integrity and screwing it up. And the beautiful part is that it is outside of advocacy. The previous definition of integrity speaks to advocating for values and norms and perfection and already knowing and having and being, whereas inquiry speaks to exploration, and there's a softness around this that is very welcome. The last thing I love about this is that it acknowledges the gaps that already exist within ourselves, which is so beautifully in contrast to the first definition of integrity, that when I found this the first time, I had a bit of an emotional moment. Because acknowledging within integrity work that we always already have gaps within ourselves, and that there exist exactly, always already there, always present, almost invited me to view them as friends, as guides, rather than something to be suppressed, something to be put away, something not to show others, because I always have to put this armor of perfect integrity on. And so I'm going to build on this definition of integrity by referring further to what Will Torbett writes on this. These gaps in ourselves appear between the results that we intended and what our performance generated. Our planned performance and the actual performance, our original intentions versus the impact that we had, and our low state of awareness in the moment of action, causing us to miss an opportunity for integrity. For this to work, we increasingly need mutuality between us and, secondly, to be vulnerable to transformation. So there's this next part around integrity, which speaks to mutuality, collaboration, collective sense-making, and vulnerability, making myself vulnerable to what needs to transform in myself and in this relationship for us to be in integrity. Now, I don't know about you, but this is like vastly different to the social and the cultural norms around integrity. And it creates this openness and this gap for us to kind of step into this work in a much more inviting way. So the next part of the theory that I want to position very briefly is integral theory by Ken Wilber. Who of you are familiar with this? Can I just see some hands? Okay, cool. I see a few hands popping up here and there. All right, so I could do a separate talk on this. It is incredible work. Ken Wilber is one of those crazy, clever people, hardworking individuals that literally, I think if he could read every book on every field in the world, he probably would. And he came up with a theory that literally circumscribes everything that he could find in history, in science, in medicine, in religion, in culture, in Agile, in business, everything. So he wrote this thing, a brief history of everything, and he came up with the theory of everything. And so far, he hasn't been proven wrong. So his theory is basically what we're going to be exploring in tandem with a few other things. And that is like any self-respecting, and this is a joke, by the way, any self-respecting model has 4 quadrants. You'll find an x-axis and a y-axis. So the x-axis is a constellation between interior and exterior, and the y-axis is between individual and collective. And you'll see that there's a little bit of a target with these circles, and those refer to levels. So if you go into this theory, you'll come up with you'll be confronted with the acronym AQAL, AQAL, which refers to all quadrants, all levels. And aqualists say that when we work with individuals and with leaders and organizations, we have to work with them on all quadrants at all levels. In fact, Ken Wilber goes as far as to say that no change in any organization at any point in time can ever take place or last unless it addresses all 4 quadrants. So the first quadrant is the subjective space. So this is the space of interior individual. So this is my thoughts, my memories, my emotions, my bodily sensations, my perceptions, my states of mind. The next is my behavior. So my facial expressions, the quizzical brow I pull when somebody says something weird, the rolling of my eyes, the email that I sent or that I didn't send, the words that I spoke, the tone of my voice, the rate of my speech when I speak, all of those things are objective behaviors that I can note. Next is the intersubjective we space. So this is our relationship, our shared culture, the language that we share, the quality of our relationships, the nature of the relationship, and our cultural background. And then lastly, the it space is governance, rules, process, laws. You can even probably say that Scrum could be seen as a its space, depending on which level you're looking at. Okay, so why this is useful for us is because this is the basis of the inquiry that we're going to go into. The next part that I want to develop is a little bit of adult development. So here I refer to the work of Robert Keegan and others. This is a massive field, and I think it's very useful for Agile practitioners. And I'm going to bottom line it. So in the 1960s, Piaget came up with a theory on how children develop. And children develop in different stages. And the more that we understood those stages, the more we realized that, we can shape how children learn. And that, I think, shaped irrevocably how all of us show up today. But very implicitly in that assumption of that definition was that once those stages are done, like the Mayan calendar, I guess, then development stops. So nobody ever thought that once you reach adulthood, we develop any further. Nobody investigated this until they did. And there are many theories, and all of them kind of dance around the same fire. They all speak to the same things. What is important for our work today is to understand the following. What integrity looks like in socialized mind, which is an early stage of development, is entirely different to what integrity looks like in self-authoring mind or self-transforming mind. In fact, how integrity shows up in self-transforming mind is inexplicable to somebody in social mind. They can literally not see it, hear it, understand it, make sense of it. It's like smelling the color 11. Until they have, it's impossible for somebody in socialized mind to make sense of how it is possible for somebody to act in the way that they do in self-transforming mind. You cannot teach it to them. You cannot explain it to them. It's inexplicable to them. So why this is important is because in organizations, at all points in time, we always deal with adults at different stages of development. What I find interesting a little bit about how we show up as Agilists sometimes is that we expect everybody to get it. We expect everybody to already be Agile. We expect people to behave in a certain way, to think in a certain way, to hold the mindset. And there is sometimes a little bit of a harshness around that. What's interesting about adult development is that it really questions that harshness and says that we need to work with people at the level that they're at. And so that again supports that issue of inquiry. What does inquiry into your understanding of integrity look like right now? As opposed to saying that this is what integrity looks like for our team, and for you to belong, you need to step into this. So I'm going to position this very, 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 very bottom line way. What are the problems we face with integrity? Why is integrity such an issue in organizations and in leadership? Well, simply because organizations are complex systems, and organizations exist in complex systems. I'm very excited to see that you guys have a a lean and Kanban and systems thinking extension to this. And so I'm just going to speak a little bit to systems thinking here as well. So in complex systems and in organizations and in life, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, there is always already more than one contradicting thing true at the same time. There is no absolute truth. And the scary thing is that we look to leaders in complex systems and in organizations to lead amidst competing truths all the time. So another thing that makes it problematic is that in complex systems, a system will always introduce decay when there is excessive power or excessive dominance of one type of thing or an imbalance. Just think of a forest. If tall trees grow too much, what does the forest do in order to bring things back into balance? It introduces fire. So this process of decay helps us to re-stimulate diversity within the system. And what we know about systems and about leadership is that the process of finding balance and navigating complexity when there is imbalance within a system, when there is excessive dominance within a system, whether that excessive dominance is a certain type of power or whether it is a lack of planning, does that sound familiar? Or a lack of reflection, or a imbalance of hierarchy in the system. Those kind of imbalances are dealt with in the following way. We deal with it by either challenging or introducing moral corruption. So if there is excessive power in a system, then it is likely that people are not going to voice their opposition to things. What happens when things are not opposed, when the voice of opposition is silent, is that that feedback cycle back to leaders does not exist. So what do leaders do? They start acting in a way that is in line with what the system gives them. So they act with impunity without even necessarily being aware of it. So we are all then part of this cycle of moral corruption and imbalance within the system. And oftentimes you'll find that in this process of decay and moral corruption that's there, and the system trying to evolve, leaders are in the middle of all of those contradictions all the time, and they're expected to be clear, they're expected to manage that, they're expected to lead through that. That's hard. So leaders are expected to hold, ignore, navigate, intervene in all of these paradoxes, complexities, uncertainties, ambiguities, etc. And the only system that they have to navigate that is their own system, their own values, their own ability to self-regulate, and their own integrity. And so oftentimes you'll find that a leader is pressed to make a decision. And when they make that decision, they are standing in competing concerns. They're standing in competing values. They're in the space of an impossible amount of complexity that they have to navigate and hold. There is no right choice because more than one contradicting thing is true at the same time, depending on who you talk to. And so a big part of this becomes compromise. What do I compromise on today? What do I ignore today? What do I focus on today? And so in all of my work as an Agile coach, if I look at every incident that has led to a production meltdown or a loss to the organization or the firing of an employee or the reprimand of an employee, I find broken integrity within the system as a whole. What I also found is that in the conversations around that, there is always an attribute to some kind of competing concern or the ignoring of something that was important. And there were opportunities for everybody to have intervened effectively before this incident happened, had they had the conversations around this. And so this is what the work is about.
Real quick,
Well,
Will,
yes.
Erin had a question she'd thrown in chat,
Yeah.
which was talking about, you were talking about the state of decay. And she asked, are all systems in a constant state of decay?
It's a great question.
I think my response to that, Will, is that yes, all systems are, but is that state of decay constant? Because some are, change is a generative act. And therefore, I'm just throwing it out there. But yes, I think that all systems are in a constant state of decay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron. And so I follow that.
Thanks, Max.
Cool. So the part that, the last part is for us to think in systems around this. How we learn as agilists, as leaders, as organizations is through something in systems that we talk about, and that is single, double, and triple loop learning. So our retrospectives are usually single loop learning. We investigate the relationship between the results and the actions we took. And if we take different actions, then we get different results. Hopefully, more of us as coaches are stepping into double loop learning, which is to start to investigate the assumptions, beliefs, expectations, and unspoken norms that inform our actions that lead to the results that we get. Now, this gets a little bit tricky and sticky. Why? Because most organizations find it difficult to implement double loop learning because it becomes increasingly spiritual the more you introduce further loops. This is uncharted territory for most people. It is difficult to manage and control. And it becomes very personal. So triple loop learning is where we start looking at who we are, our identity that informs our assumptions, our beliefs, our expectations, our unspoken norms, which informs our actions. And so this process of reflection, I think, is what Torbit, systems thinkers, and Wilber kind of bring together around an opportunity for the topic and the work of integrity. So I'm going to skip ahead. If this comes up, I'll come back to it. So I believe that our work around integrity is to do work mutually with others. To work with integrity in a collective sense making, and to create collective awareness, both of what's going on for us and what is going on for the collective. If you remember, we're talking about the we space and the I space in integral. The challenge that I found with integrity is that it often refers to what are your values. If you understand your values, and you do some work around values with a coach, then that will help you to act with more integrity. And that's oftentimes the approach in organizations. But values work often remains aspirational, and it again speaks to that first definition of integrity. It doesn't help us to address the identity of who we are in the moment of crisis, when we are facing more than one contradicting truth at the same time, when we are facing moral decay. So the response to this is that we try to do the best that we can, and when we fail, it leads to flagellation and shameful introspection and judgments of others and ourselves. But inquiry, collective inquiry, leads to awareness. From awareness, we know that eventually acceptance grows. From acceptance, understanding comes and learning comes. And from this, we lead to choice. And so far, this is the only way that I can find for us to find a path to better integrity, both within ourselves and within organizations. So, how do we do this work? I'm going to invite you to look at this team scenario. Just raise your hand when you're done. Cool. Thanks. Okay, cool. Thanks, everyone. All right, does any of this look familiar at all? Okay, so who can help identify what are some of the broken integrity things that you can identify in this scenario?
Well, the one that stands out to me the most is where they tried to hide it.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
Things can happen and all that, but when you just try to hide it, oh my goodness, it's all downhill from there.
Okay. Cool. And so I'm going to take the liberty to offer observations about what we're talking about as we go. Okay. And notice that I do so neutrally. What other areas of broken integrity do you notice in the scenario? And that's to everyone.
I know there's some hands raised. Did some folks want to comment, or do you still just have it?
Yeah, permission to speak. Just popcorn.
Mike, did you have something? I know you had your hand raised.
Yeah, I did. I've had very powerful leaders that just walked away from an environment where they couldn't fix things because of the well, I can't say it's ego, but just what's happening higher on the chain of command.
Yeah.
I think all of these have. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That's not me.
Okay. Well, I think all of these points that you're making here, there are issues of integrity with them all.
There's
I
also
totally
quite a
agree
few
with
in chat. Well,
Sorry, say again?
there's quite a few comments in chat as well.
Okay, cool.
You know, if I can give one thing, I'll give you I served in the military for many years and in a very special field. And it's when faced with the superior enemy, the only thing we can do is pop smoke and break contact. And I believe very good leaders have to run the same play because they can't fix things. They just need to adjust.
Okay. So in everything that I'm reading and hearing, I'm noticing judgment. I'm noticing positions that are being taken. I'm becoming aware of knowing and searching for certainty, both in what is going on and what is right and wrong, and what is happening and what should be happening. And these are natural responses. These are our default responses. They're not wrong, but they are partial information. In this work, my invitation is for us to realize that we can't stop there. To accept and to be aware of what it is that we're sensing and that we're thinking, and for us to work with that further. Okay, so meet Honest. He is the product manager. And currently he's really torn between a huge amount of decisions that and demands that are made of him and his teams that are in contradiction to one another all the time. So when we talk to Honest about this failure in the team, he actually admits that he just wants to stay out of trouble. He suppresses his conscience around things he knows is wrong. He just tries to get stuff done. And he tries to remember what the truth was for the person that he spoke to in which meeting, so that he can present that truth to that party at the right time. And he's ducking and diving contradictions and blame as he goes. He's also torn between doing what is right for the team, doing what's right for the COO, doing what's right for the product, doing what's right for his colleagues, and right for himself. So if you go back to this scenario, notice what might be different for you in your interpretation. Just hold that in your awareness. Okay. So when we are dealing with complexity, in Honest's example with his team, the organization is kind of saying that we value getting results, so we need to restructure the teams, right? So this team is not working, so let's restructure them. And at the same time, we also know the team needs stability in order to perform well. It's almost like we're politely stepping over what might be going on for the team. We're just solving it by restructuring. We need to urgently fix production issues impacting our clients, but at the same time, we're going through all the quality controls will take too long, so we have to take shortcuts. So all of these things are true at the same time within this organization. If we look at what's happening in this team scenario, notice what changes in your awareness. Any thoughts or comments?
I noticed that eyes soften,
Okay.
but before it felt binary, no longer feels quite so black or white.
Okay. Mike, I see your hand.
I see that, this is a team observation versus a singular. And I think that's the biggest thing where, and I apologize. I step back to the Scrum Master position where I ask, how can we fix this? And to allow the team to provide the solution.
Okay. Leonardo?
Yeah, for me, I just noticed sometimes the lack of information allows to make a judgment or a base decision without having full context of what's happening behind everything else that led to this particular issue, which could have been not just one person, but the team overall doesn't have a full structure.
Yeah. Thank you for all of your comments. Okay, so let's say that I now go and have this conversation with Honest, our product manager. After this incident, as an Agile coach, he maintains that the team owns their work and they are responsible. So they're responsible for what has happened in production and for bypassing the processes. He says that the policies and procedures should be followed by the team and that the team agreed to the scope and timelines. So if there was pressure, it's their fault. They committed to these timelines. He is furious of the betrayal of the team, even trying to hide it and not setting up the monitoring, not testing things properly, and that this impacted on the clients. And he claims that no one in the team raised any challenges in any of the stand-ups or any of the sync meetings. And he insists that the team leader be held responsible. I'm very curious why the team leader resigned. I'm also becoming curious about this thing that I'm sensing. It's a very interesting response that this product manager has provided around this scenario. And I'm getting the sense that there's almost a bit of a disconnection between the relationship of the team and the product manager. So here, in my awareness as a coach, I'm sensing different things. I'm hearing different things. There's information, but I'm also aware that there are agreements within the relationship system between the product manager and the team that led to this behavior. So, as a coach, I know that this incident is not in isolation. This incident happened as a result of a whole bunch of small things that happened in the system beforehand. Currently, this system is in decay. So it is exhibiting itself as broken integrity on multiple parts. I would even venture as far as to say that the product manager's response right here is also out of integrity. the team is out of integrity. The entire system seems to be out of integrity. So the organization's response is to find blame and to decisively act. That doesn't solve the lack of integrity. So how do we inquire, if we take Tolbert's definition, how do we inquire into the gaps of the I space, of the behavior space, of the relationship space, of the processes, policies, and procedures? And here is an extract of what I actually have in my mural that I do with leaders when there is an incident that they bring to the group coaching program. This is one of the tools that we use to do this work. So I have a conversation with them. And I say, okay, so honest, if you were to think about everything that led up to this incident, and you think about this incident, how were you affected by it? Where was your focus and attention? What role did your definition of personal integrity play? What would be needed to bring integrity back for you? And what we're doing here is we're revealing his thoughts, his emotions, his state of mind, his state of being. We're listening for beliefs, we're listening for assumptions, expectations, for norms, for avoidance. We're listening for fear. We're sensing with our bodies and our hearts and our emotions for anxiety. We're sensing into disconnect, disassociation, disavowal. We're feeling for blame. We're feeling for harshness. We're noticing the behavior. And what we're doing is we are being a transparent mirror to help Honest see and sense and feel what is happening for him. Why? Because this gets us into not just single loop learning, which, to remind us, is what are the actions that led to the results, not just double loop learning, which is what is our thinking, but it leads to us reflecting on who we are. Who is the organization being? Who is the team being? And how are they being together? And how did this lead to the results? So this inquiry helps us to reveal something really important. It leads to revealing the dissonance, the gaps that exist. Sometimes it's between values. Let's give you an example. This is a real scenario, by the way. When I spoke to this person, this leader, what had happened for them is that they valued being needed and wanted, which for them translated to behavior of compromising in the moment. So that need to be needed and wanted by the COO and by the team and by his colleagues and having a place in the organization is very closely connected for them in terms of not just their security and their future and their success, but a very deep wound as well. And so this was a very vulnerable conversation that also revealed another contradicting value. They also value being right, being safe, being without blame. So now, in the moment, they had to choose. I want to be right, and I want to be liked, or I want to be revered and regarded as important within an organization. This scenario put these two things in contradiction to one another. In the moment, he chose one. So in the conversation and reflection, when Honest and names and scenarios and everything else has been changed to protect the identity of when this individual realized that I value this and I value that, my behavior tells me that I value this and that I value that, but I value this more. It's a bit like the Agile Manifesto, right? My behavior tells me that I prioritize this over that. I prioritized my self-interest over the team. I disavowed my responsibility as a product manager to work with a team in navigating the challenges within the organization, because I was actually preoccupied with navigating what was going on for the CEO and the COO. So when we started having those conversations, we started realizing that there's choice. Now that I see that I'm actually regarding the team as less important than my relationship with the COO and the CEO, I can start to understand my behavior in planning sessions. I can start to understand my behavior in stand-ups. And I can see how that started to relate to their behavior in turn. It doesn't mean that I'm to blame. It means that I'm contributing to what is happening within the team. So again, when doing this work with a leader before there's a crisis is oftentimes more important. So had I intervened as an Agile coach, if I had greater awareness and less judgment in the scenario, I would have honored my intuition around the energy that the product manager brought into the room, the lack of focus, the division that was very subtle between the product manager and the team when it came to making decisions and sharing responsibility. There's a resistance from the team and a resistance from the leader on different things. There's avoidance of certain conversations. All of these things I knew. I sensed into this, but I didn't address it. So when we start sensing into these things, and when we start listening for assumptions, beliefs, expectations, norms, fear, avoidance, we start listening into the agreements that are made between people on how we work and what it is that we're going to do. When we start listening for authority and hierarchy and contradictions and dissonances, when we start listening for what people value in the moment and how that changes over time, those things become cues through which we can start encouraging single, double loop, triple loop learning in the I, the it, the we, and the it space by asking in inquiry, without judgment, without being right, open-ended questions that reveal who we are. Mike, I see your hand.
Forgive me, sir. I'm making too much noise here. Will,
No, not at all.
what I'm concerned about is what I've seen real world where people are in the midst of imposter syndrome and they're so scared, even though they may be going down the right direction, that they have definitely less self-confidence in what they are doing. And there's a team behind them. And you, as an Agile coach or a Scrum Master, are trying to keep things on track. I know I'm putting a bunch of variables in this equation, and Will, I don't mean to, but I'm just trying to figure this out. All right.
And I'm hearing you position some more variables. I'm wondering what your question is and how I can serve that inquiry for you.
So I have directors and I have C-level executives that are saying this is the direction we're going to go. And they're doing that because they're feeling that because they're not confident in what they're doing, this is the best course of action without looking at everything around them. They're just trying to validate their existence, their paycheck, and everybody else behind them is getting screwed. I'm sorry, that's too direct, but as an Agile coach and as a Scrum Master, I'm trying to keep this team online to accomplish an objective that we know may not be the best course of action. How do we redirect those individuals to provide the right course of action? Does that make
in
sense?
the moment, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I understand. You can correct me if I'm off base here.
Right.
So in that system, it sounds like there's already a lot of contradictions in play, like in any other system. Pretty
Right.
normal.
Yeah.
There's stuff in the I space, which you've already identified. There's behavior in the it space, which we can correlate directly to other results. There's something in the relational space that makes it unsafe to address those things.
Right.
And it's also unsafe, I'm making up, it's unsafe to even raise that from a lower level in the organization to keep people accountable about that.
Yeah,
And
nailed it.
clearly the policies around decision making also support that. Yes, Mike?
Right.
Okay. And so the power that we have as agile coaches, when we stand in neutrality and in unconditional positive regard, is to offer those observations or to inquire into that. To ask, when you made this decision, what was it that was in your focus? Yeah, but the team. Okay. I'm noticing that you're attributing your decision to the team. It sounds like the team
Yeah.
has got greater locus of control than what you do. Is that right?
Yeah,
So
that's where I live.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it's a process of slowing down, playing back, and inviting collective sense making around what is going on. What is sometimes useful is to use opportunities like decay, like this scenario, like a breakdown, where the impact is really large and people are motivated to understand what is going on. To introduce something like this framework or a process whereby we really slow down and we really go to the depth of what is going on. That opens the door for this level of inquiry. Organizations are usually uncomfortable with this level of inquiry because it is very exposing.
Yeah.
It's very vulnerable. And so how we do this is by listening, by observing, by having the agreements to do this work, and by asking permission to do that work, by using opportunities, by having conversations with people, by inviting collaborative sense making around that. There is no easy way, Mike, to do this. It is highly dependent on culture. It's
Well,
highly dependent on relationship. Yes?
Will, I respect what you're saying, and I'm sorry, I'm not hijacking this. Please understand that. The times where you're sitting, and I'll give you my secret power. Okay, I will piss off a C-level employee no matter what. I don't mean to really. I come from an operations engineering background, 23 years, and I find that I've stepped on toes. But what I'm concerned about is when you do step on the toe of a person that is looking to move forward and you're looking to provide a alternate perspective, how do you readjust from that? I mean, I don't want to piss off a person that I'm trying to work with. I want to fix it. I want to fix a problem, right?
Mike, is it your job to provide the alternate perspective, or is it to reflect the system?
You know, Aaron, that is a great question. And I've tried to reflect, and see through me. I got fired doing this. Okay. So I'm still trying to figure it out. I try to be as gentle as I could, and I know that I crossed boundaries doing so, trying to fix something that there is a lot more variables in play. I want to find a gentle way to do this.
I think
Mike,
Will's
there's
actually
nothing.
pointing to a gentle way in many regards here.
Yeah.
Because this isn't a one and done.
Right.
You know, this is a practice that, you know, leaning into these gaps at different points throughout your work. This isn't just, oh, you do this and you leave. You're going to keep coming back with this gentle persistence around questions, asking people what's a perspective that is different than the one you hold. You know, getting people to practice standing in those. You were at, you know, made the comment earlier in the chat around fragile egos.
Yeah.
The questions Will is modeling here, it will remove the fragility. Okay, and it will make a team stronger. However, it's got to be done with, you keep coming back. It's like AA. Okay, it works.
Right.
You just keep coming in. But this is also, I think, Will, leaning into your presence as a coach. you know, Mike, you know, what is the persona, what is the perspective you're coming in with? What does the system need in that moment?
Yeah, I'm looking at a person filled with ego that I'm trying to adjust to not put us, going,
And how is
full
your
speed.
ego showing up in that moment?
Well, and this is where, yeah, I don't want the team going full speed into a brick wall, and am
Okay.
looking to take that trajectory that's beyond my control and adjust, and to do it gently without stepping on ego. And that's the challenge. And I'll
Okay.
step back from here. Look, I'm taking too much time.
Okay,
Please forgive me. Please.
we'll go forward.
Yes.
Cool. Mike, you're not taking up too much time. Do I have permission to work with your inquiry?
Please.
Okay. So just noticing your own thoughts, emotions, memories, states of mind, perceptions, and immediate sensations. Just be aware of them. Slow down. Just notice. Can I then invite you to also notice your behavior? Notice the words that you were using, the judgments that you were making, the past behavior where you did step over boundaries, the challenges that you provided in spaces that you didn't have permission. And then notice the we space. Did the relationship and the agreements that you have the capacity to hold the work that you were doing or hoping to do? And is that what the system needed? So we can apply the model even unto ourselves. This work is in itself incredibly confronting. We don't have to challenge anybody. If you do this work from a place of inquiry, from a place of presence, from a place of not knowing, from a place of supporting with unconditional positive regard, this work will challenge their mindsets already. But you won't do it. They will do it. And to connect to what Erin is saying, this work helps to reveal the system, both on an individual level and a team level and an organizational level to itself. That is ugly. I don't know of any system that is ever comfortable in seeing itself, including me. And when we do that from a place of using ourselves, let me just quickly jump to here, using our bodies, using our hearts, using our minds to sense, to feel, and we bring that into collective conversation with the correct people in the room for the appropriate work, that is where transformation naturally then starts to happen. All that you are is the mirror and the room in which the work is done. Does that help, Mike?
Well, I do have a question.
Yeah.
This is more in regards to, let's say you're a director, but then you obviously have some executive levels above you. You're supposed to be the type of leader that obviously listens to both the team and your executive team. What if you do give that sort of feedback back to executives, but in many instances, you sort of just get the response that this is the way it's done? Is the approach that you just go back consecutively multiple times in a positive tone and try to get a positive response? Or how can you handle situations in which not just ego, but not listening leads to this type of outcomes?
So Leonardo, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play back what I'm hearing. I'm hearing a value judgment on ego, which suggests nothing. I'm hearing supposed to, which indicates to me that there's an expectation of behavior. I'm also hearing evidence that the relational space, the we space, may not support that expectation right now. So there's already 3 areas of inquiry that's enough to start a conversation. Hey, I have this expectation that this feedback should result in X, Y, and Z. Can I have a conversation with you around that? you seem to have a response to say that this is how it is done. Can I inquire into that? What is happening for you? There's nothing more to it than that. Listening, observing, inspecting ourselves, helping others to inspect, and continually revealing what is happening. It becomes really important, especially in the we space, in the relationships. What are the agreements that exist between leaders and directors, or principals and vice principals? What are the agreements between team members? What is the agreement between the team and stakeholders and the product manager and the COO? All of those unspoken agreements, the expectations, the assumptions, those are the things that lead to broken integrity most of the time. Does it answer your question, Leonardo?
It does. I think my next question would be, does it come to at any point where you actually have to take a harsher approach, or is it always where you listen, observe, and then inquire back without being conflictive?
That's a great question. I'm just going to stop sharing here. So I guess if we look at the competency wheel for Agile coaches, we always come from a stance of coaching. So we may step into training with permission, switch that hat. We may step into mentoring with permission. We may step into facilitation with permission, but we always come from a stance of coaching, which means that we are always standing in that presence of listening, of sensing, and of revealing the system to itself. So I can't say what is right and wrong, because that would be me stepping into certainty. What I can say is that my personal model is to always stand in the stance of coaching, to stand in the stance of inquiry, sensing, and asking, and playing back and revealing, and getting the permission to do that. Is that useful?
Yeah, extremely useful. Thank you.
Cool. Chris, I notice your hand is up.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I wanted to point out that you're also leveraging what I believe is clean language very adeptly, correct? So that's another discipline that may make a world of difference. It's not just how, what you're thinking, but it's also how you're presenting yourself. You covered it earlier. It's how you're presenting yourself, how you're forming the words, and how you're carefully engaging when it's a conversation that might be controversial or difficult.
Yeah. So it's a thing we always say in Agile coaching, is that you are the only tool you have to do the work. So don't be a tool. And it's this thing around, what is the language that I'm using? How is it informed by my thoughts, my judgments, my expectations? How do I own that? How do I work with that? How do I remain in inquiry about that, rather than judging myself for being out of integrity? Because moment by moment, and I'm hoping that we're already sensing a little bit of that even in these conversations, moment by moment, you have no idea what the system is going to throw at you next. You have no idea which of your biases are going to come up. The most effective way that I've found to navigate challenges with integrity and within organizations is to continue that inquiry into those gaps. What are my gaps? What am I sensing? What am I hearing? What is going on? How can I reveal that? How can I ask about that? How are we doing this work? How did this lead to the results? Yes, retrospectives are a great way to do that, but you can also do it in the moment. Guys, can I just quickly check? I'm sensing that the energy just changed in the room around the stand-up when we started talking about this. I could be entirely wrong. I'm noticing some feet shuffling. I'm noticing people looking down. Is there something that we need to talk about? What other questions do you have?
You know,
I
Will,
had
I heard something.
I had a real
Will,
quick follow-up, Will, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
how do you
Right.
kind of the question that I ask artists and they absolutely hate it. I see someone out painting in plein air, right? I'll ask them, when is your painting done? So when do we know when that we're done for this particular interaction and move on? Because I find that that's the most difficult question for me. You know, when do we stop pressing? When do we stop leaning in?
I'm going to ask you a question to position my answer. Actually, I'm not. There's this thing in organizations that I think inadvertently Agile has played into. And there's this idea that utopia comes when we have done transformational work. It's a lie. Utopia doesn't exist. Transformation never comes. We are in perpetual transition. So when is the work done? We're not building something static. We're not capturing something that is dead in a frame or a picture. We are alive. Systems are alive. They're always changing. They're always in conflict. There is always decay. It's messy. It's complicated. It's unpredictable. And all we have is one another.
Right.
How does
Okay.
that?
Yeah. So again, I was speaking specifically and very precisely to the moment, the exchanges that are going on in a specific time frame, in a specific exchange. How do we know when we should just, melt out and let the system go back to what it was doing before we're part of the system too. We can't deny that, correct? So at what point do we cease vibrating so brilliantly?
We don't know. There is absolutely there's no certainty in this work. So when the system tells you that we've had enough, then they've had enough. When it ends, it ends. A little bit like open space, right? When there's avoidance, then we name that and we ask, when would it be useful to continue this work? Is this enough for now?
So you just query the system, or you're querying okay, that makes sense.
Always.
Okay.
Always.
Will, may I add to this, sir?
Yeah, just do a time check. We're gonna have to wrap up in the next couple minutes.
Thanks, Lonnie.
Lonnie, if let's wrap this. I mean, I don't want to add noise, please.
Okay. Go ahead, Will, if you had some final thoughts.
I'll leave you with this. To the degree that you research your petition, you will be answered. If you have a question about what's going on for your work, for your organization, if you feel that something is out of whack, if you feel that there are shoulds, that Exco should do this, that the team should do that, to the degree that you research your petition, you will be answered. I think that integrity has got a lot to do with that. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much, Will. I know I feel like I'm gonna have to go back and get some of the questions and the way you phrased it. And I thank you so much for this, because I think I know for me in my interactions, it's been a common thing that I've wanted to change, and some of it's all that reflection. I like that. Reflect on ourselves and observe ourselves first. All right, thank you so much. A quick reminder before we end, our next virtual meetup will be in February. And so this one is already posted on meetup.com. So in psychological safety, always a popular topic. So please join us. And if you are interested in being a member or sponsoring Agile Austin, the membership, and especially it's a great time to join now if you want to join the conference because you get a discount on our Agile, Keep Austin Agile conference. Just a quick thanks to our board members who really help out. Max was joining today, Ben was helping out with some Zoom stuff, so we always appreciate the support on in the background or up front. And then thank you to all of you for joining and for all your comments, because the interaction is really what makes this an amazing meetup that we always like seeing the new people. We always like seeing folks who have been here before. So we definitely invite you all to come back and join us. All right. Well, thank you all so much and have a wonderful evening / morning. Well, rest of
Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so
Will.
much,
Bye,
everyone.
folks.
Thank
Take
you,
care,
everyone.
everyone. You take care. All right. Bye.
Bye.